Hospitals are no longer experimenting with AI. They now run on it. Before a doctor finishes reading your chart, a risk score may already exist. Before discharge is discussed, a prediction model may have estimated your chance of returning. Before a bed is assigned, an allocation system may have optimized where you should go. You don't see this. You see a clinician, you hear a recommendation. But behind that conversation is a dashboard. And once hospitals depend on those dashboards to run safely, removing them doesn't look cautious. It looks dangerous. Walk into an emergency department. A nurse triages you. A doctor examines you. Someone weighs your symptoms against experience. Two patients with similar complaints might receive different decisions because context matters. Age, history, subtle deterioration, a feeling that something isn't right. Judgment lived in people. If something went wrong, you could ask, "Why did you decide that?" And someone would answer. That answer might not be perfect, but someone owned it. Hospitals were built around trained judgment and second opinions. Guidelines existed, checklists existed, but the final decision happened in conversation. The system supported the clinician. It didn't structure the outcome before the conversation began. In a hospital room, that difference is visible. A doctor pulls up a chair, looks at you, asks a follow-up question not written in the chart. Maybe you look tired. Maybe your breathing changes when you speak. Those details weren't inputs, they were impressions. And impressions once had authority. That's what changed. Hospitals didn't flip a switch. They integrated. Sepsis prediction systems monitor vitals in real time. One of the most widely deployed examples is Epic's sepsis prediction model, built directly into hospital electronic record systems across the United States. It continuously analyzes patient data and flags deterioration risk automatically, often before a clinician would spot it on their own. Readmission models score patients before discharge. Bed management dashboards optimize capacity across wards. Triage algorithms assign risk categories before a doctor reviews the file. These systems live inside the workflow software. They color-code patient lists. They reorder queues automatically. They generate alerts that interrupt other tasks. When a red flag appears on a screen in a busy emergency department, it doesn't feel theoretical. It feels urgent. And urgency changes behavior. Each of these systems was introduced for a reason. Earlier detection, fewer missed cases, better resource allocation, lower mortality, and many of them work. If a sepsis alert triggers earlier than a human would notice, intervention can begin sooner. If a discharge model flags high risk, follow-up care can be scheduled. If bed allocation is optimized, waiting times fall. This isn't theory. This is how the hospital runs now. Open the dashboard. There is the score. There is the color band. There is the probability range. The clinician still decides, but the decision now starts from a number. In real life, that changes how conversations start. Instead of asking, "What do we think is happening?" teams ask, "Why is the score high?" The number becomes the starting frame. Context is filtered through it. And once numbers anchor decisions, deviating from them requires justification. That's the moment most people never see. The threshold moment isn't dramatic. It's procedural. A doctor overrides a high-risk flag. A complication follows. The case is reviewed. The question is no longer, "What was your reasoning?" It becomes, "Why did you override the model?" This is where authority shifts, because everything in a hospital is reviewed. Every decision is documented. Every deviation leaves a trail. Every adverse event triggers review. When a model recommendation is recorded in the system, it becomes part of that record. Following it is defensible. Overriding it requires explanation, and explanation is exposure. Not because it's flawless, because it leaves a record. It shows historical performance. It shows past performance. It shows testing. It looks objective. If a clinician follows the system and harm occurs, they followed protocol. If they ignore it and harm occurs, they deviated. So behavior adapts, not out of blind trust, out of exposure management. Over time, staff learn where friction lives. The safest path isn't always the most intuitive one. It's the one that protects you if something goes wrong. It's the one aligned with the system. And once that pattern stabilizes, the tool stops being advisory. It becomes structural. The hospital is no longer just using the model, it is operating through it. Now imagine removing it. Turn off the sepsis alerts, disable the triage scoring, close the bed optimization dashboard, waiting times increase, missed cases rise, escalation slow, audit questions multiply. Suddenly, switching it off doesn't look like reclaiming human judgment. It looks like lowering standards. That's when you realize it can't just be switched off. Care pathways assume the model exists. Staffing plans assume optimization. Liability frameworks assume system documentation. Training adapts too. New staff learn where the alerts appear. They learn which thresholds escalate automatically. They learn which scores trigger review. Over time, the model stops feeling like a tool. It feels like part of the hospital's anatomy. Something you work around, not without. The hospital runs on the logic. Doctors still speak to patients. Nurses still assess symptoms. But decisions are shaped upstream. Your treatment timeline may already be influenced by a risk score. Your discharge may already be influenced by a probability threshold. Your priority may already be influenced by a ranking system. No one announces this as a transfer of authority. Patients rarely see the layer above the conversation. They see empathy. They hear reassurance. They sign consent forms. But the pace of their care may already be influenced by a predictive dashboard. Not maliciously, not secretly, just by design. And systems don't need intent to reshape power. It feels like improvement. Until you realize the system isn't assisting anymore, it's structuring. And once it reaches that stage, turning it off isn't a real option. It's not going to happen. That's the shift. Not that doctors disappeared, but that the hospital now depends on logic no single human fully controls. When a tool becomes part of the system, human judgment stops leading. If this felt subtle, that's because most infrastructure shifts are. Hospitals didn't surrender authority. They embedded systems that made human discretion harder to defend. Tap like if this helped you see how power moves without announcements. Subscribe to become part of the Unlocked, where we examine how intelligence, institutions, and infrastructure quietly reshape the world around us. And if someone you know still believes these systems are just support tools, share this with them. Because the most significant changes aren't loud, they're built into the workflow. Because the future isn't coming, it's already here.